Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be taking a look at some players that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should take a look at in the upcoming 2025 NFL free agency. I've listed 10 players that I think the Buccaneers should take a look at, and to be honest, folks, they're more low-key type of options. Yes, we've talked about Max Crosby, we've talked about Myles Garrett, we've talked about Trey Hendrickson. This is all just edge rushers, by the way. But I listed some, they're all defensive guys, by the way, but I have listed some free agents that I think the Buccaneers should take a look at this upcoming season that I don't necessarily believe would break the bank and could still be very strong contributors to this Buccaneers defense. And the first guy on my list is Derek Barnett, one-time Super Bowl champion with the Philadelphia Eagles, has most recently played with the Houston Texans. He is going to be 29 years old by the start of the upcoming season. As I said, has had 2 years with Houston in 2023 and in 2024, and overall was pretty solid in Houston last season. He had 5 sacks, he had 7 quarterback hits, he had 4 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumbles recovered, which both those fumble recoveries were for touchdowns, by the way, so Derek Barnett has a little bit of scoring ability as well, and that was only starting 1 game this past year for Houston. So I think if you give him more opportunities, you could see him start to shine a little bit more. It would be interesting to see where he fits in a potential 3-4 style of defense. He's only ever played defensive end throughout his career with the Eagles and with the Texans as well. He is 6'3", 259 pounds, according to Pro Football Reference. So, to be honest, you could have him on the line or at outside linebacker. I think either or could be an interesting situation, in my opinion. And you take a look at Barnett's overall Pro Football Focus grades, and there's a lot to like, right? There is a lot to like. He had an overall grade of 74.6. That was 34th out of 211 eligible defenders this past year. A 68.5 pass rush grade. That was 50th out of 211. And a 72.6 run defense grade. That was 28th out of 211 edge defenders. So, any way you slice it, in terms of pass rushing, Derek Barnett was above average. In terms of run defense, he was starting quality. In terms of overall grade, he was just a smidge below. In fact, you could argue he was starting quality, considering most teams have 2 edge defenders, right? So he was a starting caliber edge defender, in my opinion. And I think at minimum, you can bring him in as a valuable depth piece if he does not re-sign with Houston. That obviously remains to be seen, but he could be a guy that you can have him compete with Logan Hall for a starting defensive end spot, maybe be like your 3rd or 4th pass rusher as an stand-up outside edge rushing linebacker if you don't bring back Anthony Nelson and presumably don't bring back Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Barnett could be a guy who could just be a solid veteran to have around as well. Still relatively young at 29 years old, a one-time Super Bowl champion, would not be a bad addition at all, in my opinion. The next player I want to talk about is honestly a guy that I've talked about a few times here on the channel. It's Dante Fowler Jr. Now, I like Dante Fowler Jr. Of course, he is a former Florida Gator. He went to Lakewood High School here in Florida from St. Petersburg, Florida, my neck of the woods. And the dude's just been pretty solid throughout his career in terms of just being a capable rotational type of pass rusher. And this past year with the Washington Commanders, he really came into his own. 10.5 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, 2 forced fumbles, 1 interception that was brought back for a touchdown, by the way. And he only started in 7 total games for Washington this past year. You take a look at the overall Pro Football Focus grades as well. He had a 62.1 overall grade. That was 100th out of 211 edge defenders. A 65.9 pass rush grade, which was 69th out of 211 edge defenders. And unfortunately, a 50.0 run defense grade, which was 170th out of 211 edge defenders. But what I like about Dante Fowler is that he can be a pass rush specialist, so to speak. It seems like that was his main role with the Washington Commanders, and he was successful in that. And you want to talk about a guy who, he will be 31 years old by the start of this upcoming season, but a born and raised Florida guy, right, who knows this area, would probably love to play for his hometown team, right? He did get to play in Jacksonville, was drafted in Jacksonville at the start of his career, but to go even closer to home, to Tampa Bay, It'd be a great story, in my opinion. I would like to see Dante Fowler come home and at least be a veteran pass rush specialist for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It would not be a bad addition at all, in my opinion. The last pass rusher I want to mention is a guy that we had talked about last year, but did end up rejoining the Dallas Cowboys. It's Chauncey Golston. Now, Chauncey Golston is pretty solid. Okay. This past season was fine, I believe, all things considered, in terms of what Golston was able to do. You take a look at his overall stats. He did come away with 5.5 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, 5 passes deflected. He had 1 interception for 18 yards. He did start 13 games. He is a former third-round pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. I believe he is expected to be a free agent. He had an overall grade of 65.3 this past year, a pass rush grade of 60.7, and a run defense grade of 56.8. This is a guy that I think you're looking as more of a, hey, can we grow and develop this guy? He just turned 27 years old, by the way, and I think is overall a guy that might not cost a whole heck of a lot of money, but can still give you solid rotational type of play, right? I mean, the production you're getting from Chauncey Golston is very similar to what you got from guys like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka this past season and Anthony Nelson this past season as well. But it's going to be a new face brought in. You never know what can happen when new faces join new defensive schemes and whatnot. He's never played, or I'm wrong. He did play linebacker early on in his career. His first 2 years, he played linebacker for Dallas before switching to defensive end. So he is familiar with playing linebacker at the NFL level, stand-up linebacker. So that is something that we could possibly see in that mix as well with Chauncey Golston. I don't necessarily think he would cost a ton of money. And I think it is a low upside, right? I guess I should say low risk, high reward type of signing. But moving on to middle linebackers now. There are a couple of guys on my list. The first person I want to mention is actually middle linebacker Chris Barnes with the Arizona Cardinals. Folks, it's been a long day. My voice is shot. It is what it is. But back to Chris Barnes, okay? Only 26 years old, okay, with the Arizona Cardinals, has honestly kind of carved out a niche for himself. He will be 27 years old by this upcoming season, okay? But he did have 35 combined tackles, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, 3 tackles for loss while with Arizona. He's also played a lot for the Green Bay Packers his first 2 years, where he had 80-plus tackles in his first 2 years, and then saw significantly less playing time, I believe, due to injury in 2022, and then joined the Arizona Cardinals in 2023 and beyond. But you take a look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, and there's some good work here, right? A 63.1 overall grade, that is 93rd out of 189 linebackers. A pass rush grade of 63.1, that's 64th out of 189 linebackers. A run defense grade of 71.8, that's 55th out of 189, but a coverage grade of 58, which is 101st out of 189. I'm not saying that Chris Barnes is going to be a world beater and is going to absolutely take over the world, right? But if you are looking for a guy who is still young, right, only 27 years old, and has some veteran capabilities to him and can kind of be a fit for your defense, Chris Barnes can be that guy. In terms of run defense, he's well above average, right? He's basically about starting level. Pass rush grade, about starting level if you're talking about 3-4 where you have 2 inside linebackers. The coverage is a bit iffy, but if you can get Servassier Dennis on his game, or if Levante David comes back, that's huge as well. Chris Barnes could be a rotational veteran linebacker that I think would be very serviceable, in my opinion, and I would not mind that under any circumstances. What about another guy that the Bucs may be a little bit familiar with, though? What about Devin Bush? Now, some people may say, well, wait a minute. Why does that name sound so familiar? Well, Devin Bush was actually the other linebacker taken high up in the NFL draft in which Devin White was drafted. Now, Devin Bush had a fantastic year, pretty much by most accounts, with the Cleveland Browns, okay? And just taking a look at the overall statistics with Bush in his year in Cleveland, his lone year, 76 total tackles, 1 sack, 3 passes deflected. Nothing necessarily to write home about, right? He is still extremely young. He will be 27 years old this upcoming season. is another former Florida man from Pembroke Pines, Florida, so that's pretty cool. But listen to these Pro Football Focus grades, guys. 79.2 overall grade, that was 16th out of 189 linebackers. A 77.5 pass rush grade, 13th out of 189 linebackers. A run defense grade of 86.4, that's elite according to Pro Football Focus, and was 12th out of 189 overall linebackers. But again, here's the problem. Coverage grade of 57.9, 102nd out of 189 overall linebackers. So again, another linebacker where you are seeing good pass rush, in fact, better pass rush than Chris Barnes, elite levels of run defense, and a top tier overall grade, but that coverage though, right? That coverage is not great, and the Buccaneers have had issues without covering linebackers in the past. So this is another scenario where you may need SirVocea Dennis to step up. You may need another guy in there, right? But, I mean, at only 26, 27 years old, take a flyer, man. I don't necessarily know what his expected contract is going to be. I imagine he's going to get some type of a pay raise, something along those lines. But if the Buccaneers could get him at an affordable cost, that'd be pretty nice. Be pretty nice in my opinion. The last middle linebacker I do want to talk about, this guy is a bit older of a veteran, but is still very solid nonetheless in my opinion. It is Cody Barton of the Denver Broncos. Cody Barton, 28 years old. But you listen to the grades, right? And it's another linebacker where these things are going to start sounding very similar. Right. But before I talk about the grades, let's talk about the stats, though. 106 total tackles, a sack and a half, 1 fumble recovery, and it was for a touchdown, 1 forced fumble, 5 passes deflected, and 2 interceptions. So not bad at all. This would be his 4th team in 4 years, but I don't necessarily think that that is something to take away from Barton's value, because you listen to the Pro Football Focus grades, a 66.1 overall grade, that's 81st out of 189 linebackers, 62.5 pass rush grade, 65th out of 189, a run defense grade of 79.9, again, that's towards elite levels, 28th out of 189, but coverage grade of 54.9, again, 117th out of 189. You guys are noticing a theme with these middle linebackers that I'm selecting is these guys can't necessarily cover that well. I'm also looking for guys that kind of fit the mold of what Todd Bowles tends to look for, and he wants run stoppers, man. I mean, we saw it with KJ Britt, we saw it with Devin White. Levante David's been that main coverage guy, and now it seems like SirVocea Dennis might be that next coverage guy going forward. So I'm looking for guys that don't necessarily, are world beaters at every single thing, because those are going to be guys that are going to be making a lot of money, right? I'm looking for capable veterans that can give you quality snaps. And I think Chris Barnes, Devin Bush, and Cody Barton, especially Cody Barton, can give you all of that, because Cody Barton started a lot of games over his years. 43 total games. He started 11 games in 2022, 13 in 2023, and 14 in 2024. So he's played a lot of ball lately, okay? He just turned 28 years old, will be 28 by the start of this upcoming season. And in all 3 of those guys can be solid number 2s, in my opinion. But what about cornerback? What about, maybe a number 2 in that position if you move on from Jamel Dean? Well, the first name that I kind of thought of whenever I was taking a look at the available free agent lists is an Atlanta Falcon. It's Mike Hughes with the Atlanta Falcons, 28 years old, had an overall grade of 71.9, was 34th out of 223 cornerbacks, a pass rush grade of 52.4, 102nd out of 223, a run defense grade of 68.2, that was 62nd out of 223 corners, and a coverage grade of 71.4, 42nd out of 223 corners. I like Mike Hughes. He's a pretty decent cornerback overall, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings before making his way over to the Detroit Lions and then eventually the Atlanta Falcons. Another kind of former Florida player. He played at UCF. That was when he was drafted, was whenever he was with UCF. So he's a bit of a, Florida man. 6 pass deflections this past year, 66 combined tackles. He started 15 games, which is far and away the most games he has ever started in his career. And I thought he did a fine job, all things considered. And At the very least, again, I'm looking at depth. I'm looking for veteran guys that could start in pinches if you need him to, especially at cornerback. And Hughes kind of does fit that role. He did just literally turn 28 years old just a few days ago, and I think could be a serviceable veteran that could start if you absolutely needed him to. The next cornerback slash safety I want to take a look at is actually going to be Elijah Molden with the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Elijah Molden has played both cornerback and safety in his career. He actually played safety for the Los Angeles Chargers this past season, and he did pretty darn good. 75 combined tackles, 2 fumbles recovered, 7 passes deflected, and 3 interceptions, folks. Listen to these grades. An overall grade of 75.6, 22nd out of 170 safeties. Pass rush grade of 55.2, 93rd out of 170 safeties. Run defense grade of 71.5, 51st out of 170 safeties. And a coverage grade of 75.4, 18th out of 170 safeties. Look, I like this because of the cornerback safety versatility, which the Buccaneers love. Now, according to Pro Football Reference, he actually did play cornerback this past year. Don't necessarily know if that's 100% true. He did start 12 games, though. I want to see if we can get a snap count. We cannot, so unfortunate. But I like what Elijah Molden brings in terms of versatility. Seems like a very solid fit for the Buccaneers defense. And look, I love Jordan Whitehead, okay? I love Mike Edwards. But if one or both those guys are moved on this offseason, I think you could bring in Elijah Molden and he could be a starting caliber defensive back for you and make a pretty good pairing with Antoine Winfield Jr. or possibly even playing him outside at cornerback as well. The last cornerback I do want to mention is going to be another Atlanta Falcon. I know. It is what it is. But it's actually Kevin King. Remember Kevin King? He was the guy who gave up the touchdown to Scotty Miller in that 2020 NFC playoff game with Tom Brady and whatnot. Well, he's back. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, 29 years old. And guys, at least according to his overall grades, he did pretty solid in limited capacity. An overall grade of 81.7, that was 7th out of 223 cornerbacks. A pass rush grade of 58.8, that was 71st out of 223 cornerbacks. Run defense grade of 70.9, 48th out of 223, and a coverage grade of 79.3, that was 12th out of 223 cornerbacks. Here's the thing, though. Kevin King did not play a lot this past season, okay? He just didn't. Okay, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. He only played in 15 games this past year, started 1. He had 1 fumble recovered, 2 passes deflected, 10 combined tackles. He had been a bit of a bit starter for the Green Bay Packers the past couple of, or I guess I should say, in 2021. What the heck happened to Kevin King? Did he just, take some years off or something after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers debacle, so to speak? What in the world? What did he... Let's see. He skipped the 2022 season to get healthy. Then in 2023, he suffered a torn Achilles tendon. Well, that's not good. That's not great at all. But then he came back to the Atlanta Falcons. So, I mean, hey, maybe he's somebody that can be in that mix, kind of a veteran addition, a backup at the very least, guys, okay? He's got great size and has been a starting caliber cornerback in this league before, so there's certainly worse options out there, okay? And if you're going to bring him in on some type of really cheap deal to be a backup, I'm fine with that. The last guy I do want to mention, I almost jumped the gun there. Julian Blackman is the last player I want to mention. Another safety, a guy who did pretty well last year, okay? 70 solo tackles, 3 interceptions. He had an overall grade of 69.3. That was 48th out of 170 strong safeties. A pass rush grade of 69.4, 23rd out of 170 strong safeties. A run defense grade of 55.1. 147th out of 170 strong safeties, and a coverage grade, though, of 73.5, 23rd out of 170 safeties. So, Julian Blackman's a bit of a mixed bag, right? Overall, solid, capable, almost starting quality, right? Pass rush, good. Run defense, not good. But coverage, good. And I think the Buccaneers are looking for more coverage guys right now, right? And I think Blackman could fit that bill, maybe some type of rotational safety, right? He's still very young, by the way, still very, very young, and is someone that I think you could certainly do a lot worse than, right? I don't necessarily know what type of money he is going to command, but I do believe, it will be 27 years old this upcoming season, is a guy that, hey, can give you some starting quality snaps, has never been like a full-time starter in his career. Maybe that means the Buccaneers could get him at cheap and have a very capable backup safety. But what do you guys think about all these names that I mentioned? Let me know your thoughts and opinions about them down in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. As always, I will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.